Alright, back with some more guides here. This is going to be Cenarius and Xavius, which are the final two bosses in Emerald Nightmare. This is Cenarius right here. He's a two-phase fight with a couple main interactions. So the big thing is that he'll cleanse ground around the room, or he'll cleanse a force of nightmare around the room depending on where players are clumped. So you'll see there's this egg over here and we all run to it. Since we're the closest ones to it, he'll cleanse that egg and create a patch of cleansed ground beneath it. And that egg will turn into a friendly dragon. There are several different kinds of those things around the room. There's an egg, there's a tree, there's wisps, all kinds of stuff. So basically, you have the choice to leave the rest of them as bad and make one of them good. And each good one has a different effect, each bad one has a different effect. In addition to that, he puts a stacking debuff on the raid called Creeping Nightmare, which does increasing damage per stack, but also increases the damage you take per stack. The basic rule of thumb is cleanse somewhere between 20 and 25. That might be reduced on Mythic. But the way that you cleanse is you run into that green ground. Every time you use it, it shrinks in size, so you need to make sure that you're not overusing it and leaving some people to be, fucked up with, like, 40 stacks, because they'll just die. The other mechanic he has in throughout the whole fight is Nightmare Brambles. A player gets fixated, and behind them they leave a path of brambles in the ground. You can see those little circles. If you run into those, they root you and do a bunch of damage per second. However, you can put Blessing of Freedom on yourself or someone, pump a personal, and run through and clear all those things. The other thing is that the boss cannot be tanked near any of his adds. If he is, he gives them a 50% Thorns, which will kill your DPS really fast. Alright, so as far as the adds, here we go. So there are Wisps. Now Wisps, when they are not cleansed, they chase players and pulse for moderate, 400,000 damage in 8 yards, and on Mythic they also explode on death in 12 yards. So they just need to be kited and killed, not super complex. However, if they are cleansed, then they become good Wisps, and they'll spawn patches of cleansing ground all across the room. So you see those smaller patches of green? Those are from the Wisps. And you can use those to cleanse 2 or 3 people, instead of using your major patch. So it kind of gives you the ability to cleanse stacks at a lower number, like 15 instead, and give your healers some love. Then there's the Ancient. Now the Ancient is, like the giant tree Ancient, and when he is bad, he stomps melee for split damage. So melee need to make sure they're in there. Healers, if you can stack in there as well, split that damage some more. However, on Mythic, just a note, he's any stomp that you take increased damage from the next stomp for 6 seconds, and he does 2 stomps in rapid succession. So you'll need to have 2 groups in there, that or potentially a power word barrier or something like that. Anyways, when he is cleansed, though, when he is good, he restores 3% mana to nearby allies every 1 second. So that might be necessary to restore your healer's mana on Mythic. Then there's the Drake. Well, actually, we'll skip the Drake and go to the Sisters since they're up right now in the video. The Sisters, when they are bad, they throw an AoE dot javelin at a target. So stay spread out, because if it hits you, it gives you and anyone within a couple yards a dot. They also cast a kickable heal, needs to be kicked, and then they throw bombs on people, and those bombs don't do a ton of damage. However, if they hit anyone, then they give that player a bomb, so they can spread to the whole raid really quickly if you're careless. You need to make sure you spread out, and you're the only person hit by your bomb. If they are cleansed, however, then they basically give allies within 6 yards Blessing of Freedom, 75% move speed, and Shadow Immunity for 6 seconds or 4 seconds. It's not long, but it's enough to clear any Nightmare Brambles. And potentially that might be, if they recast that, we might be able to use that for the Ancient's Desiccated Stomp, the one that splits in melee. We might be able to have that timed so that we get Shadow Immunity when he's doing his stomps. And the last ad is the Drake, the dragon. When he's bad, he'll face a random direction and breathes on the raid for a fuckload of damage. When he'll at 30%, he also does a wing buffet, and he will do increasing damage on that until he is killed. So he needs to be burned from 30% downward. When he's good, he just gives you death protection and 25% healing increase. So that's it for phase 1. In phase 3, or phase 2 to get there, he spawns fog beasts. Stay away from them, they just AoE. He throws a spear on the tank, and it spawns a giant puddle on the ground based on how much damage was mitigated. Steel Nightmare Brambles. He tries to kill Malfurion, you just have to kill the roots that he puts on Malfurion, and Malfurion will cleanse groups of players, so you need to group up to be cleansed of your creeping nightmare. That's it for him. Alright, so Xavius, last boss of World Nightmare. So he has one really cool mechanic. I mean, he has a bunch of mechanics, but one that is really the center of the fight, and that is he sends players into a dream. So he'll do this at 95 and 60%, and while you're in a dream, you are a copy of your player. So any cooldowns that you use in the dream, when you wake up, those cooldowns will be back up on your real character. So it's pretty advantageous to wait to see if you get the dream at 95%, then use all your cooldowns. Because if you have your cooldowns on cooldown when you go into the dream, then they'll be on cooldown in the dream as well. It's just a copy of your character from when you go into the dream. While you're in the dream, if you earn corruption, which has interesting mechanics that I'll explain in a moment, and you die in the dream or anything like that, when you wake up, you lose all that corruption. Now, you can either leave the dream by dying or by letting the dream expire. I believe it lasts a minute and a half, maybe 2. And while you're in the dream, you have specific jobs to do, since you aren't earning corruption. Now, players who get corruption, at 25 corruption, they'll spawn a massive hit on the ground, like that in the distance you see, and only you can see that. Or any players who are above 25 corruption can see that. And you just want to make sure that you avoid it. It does damage based on how far away you are. At 66 corruption, you get all those smaller void zones around the room. And again, only people with 66 corruption can see those. You just need to make sure that you avoid them. They cause more corruption as well and more damage. And at 100% corruption, you go insane for 20 seconds, increasing all damage and healing done by 150% for 20 seconds. So you kind of want to time that. Like, if you have 30 seconds left on your dream and you can go insane right then that's awesome. Because if you, at the end of your insanity, you will be mind controlled. If you're in a dream, however, you'll just wake up. You won't get mind controlled. So it's a really good idea if you can make it happen to get that insane buff. Now, other things that are happening in the fight. At 95%, he spawns a Corruption Horror, which is that ad right there. It has a cleave, and it does AoE corruption on the raid, so it just needs to be killed pretty quickly. There are also little ads that spawn and fixate on players. You see the small ones right there, and they'll explode on the first player they hit, causing AoE corruption. I believe 25 AoE corruption on Mythic. It's less on Heroic. And that's it for phase 1, really, in terms of mechanics. There's also these basically rock chaos-like effect. So that it connects 2 players, and those players have to run behind the raid because it'll cause a rock chaos basically across the raid and knock everyone back and do damage. Once he hits 65%, he changes abilities. He gets that meteor there, and that just does damage based on how many people split it. It also does corruption to those people. So there's like a certain amount of unavoidable corruption that the raid is getting throughout the fight. On Heroic, it decays. I doubt that'll be the case on Mythic. So any corruption you get will probably be permanent. In addition to that, tanks have a mechanic that they get 2 stacks of this ability. It's dispellable, and they want to taunt. Whoever dispels that tank will get 25 immediate corruption, which is a ton. So only healers who are in the dream want to grab that, want to get that dispel. And healers is pretty easy for you to go insane in the dream, so we can kind of bounce that around and have, to make sure that you get the most out of your dream, and then other people can dispel to make sure that at the last 30 seconds you can go insane and just do a ton of healing and damage. From 65% downwards, however, whenever you dispel a tank, they take 150% extra physical damage for 30 seconds. So you want to make sure that you dispel the moment they are out of range, because the last thing it does is when you dispel them, it explodes for 25 yards, doing a ton of damage and corruption. So they'll run out once they have 2 stacks. You dispel immediately so that they have time to cool down that 30 seconds and not take a ridiculous amount of physical damage. Now, 65%, he'll also spawn ads called Inconceivable Horrors, and they are basically like the first boss in Blackrock Hold. They'll spawn from the edges of the room, they'll slowly move towards the boss. If they reach the boss, it may as well be a wipe. They just give the raid, like the entire raid, 25 corruption. It's terrible. But they can be slowed, stunned, and killed, and you want to kill them. However, when they die, they drop a puddle on the ground, and if you don't soak that puddle within 15 seconds, they recoalesce into an Inconceivable Horror. Now, the DPS who are in the dream, it is your job to soak those puddles. Hopefully, that's enough to make you go insane in the last 30 seconds or so of your dream. However, on normal testing, it was pretty much impossible to go insane as a DPS, so we'll see how that looks on live. Otherwise, that's it for Phase 2. Now, at 30%, he goes into his final phase. He keeps Meteor, but he does not send anyone into a dream. He only sends people to dream at 95 and 65%. From then on, you are on your own. Now, he spawns these tentacles around the room, and these tentacles just have a cast. It does light damage to an individual player and gives them 3 corruption. We may have to manage these slightly. We may have to kill like 1 or 2 here and there to kind of make sure that we don't gain corruption too fast, but at the same time it's kind of advantageous to have them make a couple DPS go insane so that they have 150% increased damage for 20 seconds and you can melt the boss. On Mythic, we want to make sure that happens, that the raid's going insane at a point where we can definitely kill the boss within 20 seconds, because if we start having MCs popping up on the raid, that's a huge problem. So we'll see. On normal, we just left these up, and we're able to just kill the boss. On Mythic, we may need to kill like 1 or 2 here and there to make sure that we kind of pace our insanity, and then we get it in the last 20 seconds and just burn the boss to death. Mythic mechanics, we basically don't know anything about Mythic. There are some stuff that we'll talk about internally, but this boss has all its Mythic mechanics hidden in the Dungeon Journal. And that is it for Emerald Nightmare. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments or on the forums. Thanks for watching.